towards integrating AI, and if these algorithms were upgraded using quantum computers, healthcare would gain a massive boost. By running searches on quantum computers, they would go through every molecule, every cell model, every silicon human tissue, and every network at higher speeds than anything else, opening many theoretical possibilities. Cures like Alzheimer's and even cancer could be possible. Every kind of scenario is run through, allowing us to make many drugs for many diseases. Curing diseases could become increasingly easier, and many diseases could become a worry of the past. The benefits don't just stop at drugs either. Therapies and DNA analyzation could be overhauled as well. As of now, before anyone is given therapy, living cells are tested to get a good idea of what would happen. But even then, every variable can't be accounted for. But with quantum computing, simulating much less cells will be required for testing, and yet the therapy's impact will be charted at a much more efficient and accurate rate. By using simulation that involves every variable of the human body, like body fluids, circulation, electrolytes, hormones, metabolism, and skin temperature, quick simulations of what would happen if that certain therapy was instituted would be seen. Before even starting the therapy, scientists would have a good idea of both what would happen and what the best course of action is. DNA analysis would also become more powerful. Today, people are able to have their genes analyzed, allowing them to figure out what diseases they are prone to and how to prevent them. But this takes quite some time, and scientists aren't fully comprehensive of all the genes. But by implementing quantum computing, you can make biological simulations and genetic analysis faster and more accurate, helping scientists identify better treatments and predict disease risk with greater precision. Although quantum computation holds much promise, it is not an established and available technology. The very reasons why quantum computers have such potential makes them just as difficult to harness. Classical computers are designed not to deteriorate in unideal environments, but to thrive in them. A quantum computer, on the other hand, will immediately fall apart when subjected to such environments. This accounts for some of the major hurdles in the way of this technology. One of the largest challenges in this technology is decoherence. This is when a qubit loses its quantum state, losing all of its special properties. Even a very small disturbance, such as a wave of heat, or an electromagnetic wave, can cause a qubit to lose those properties. As a result, information being processed will be lost and errors will be spread in the system. And this problem is exacerbated when larger quantum systems are considered. Handling a small number of qubits in a controlled setup is very hard work, but handling a massive amount of qubits is a totally different story. As soon as a new qubit is added, it further aggravates the problem of error creation. Another serious challenge is the challenge of maintaining connections among qubits. While entanglement is a key requirement in quantum computing, maintaining connections among these qubits becomes increasingly difficult with scale. One error in connections can bring an entire calculation crashing down. For a classical computer, it is not very difficult to increase capacity. All you have to do is add more components. But this is not the same for quantum computers. Cost is another major hurdle in this technology. Most builds of a quantum computer have to be performed at very low temperatures, bordering at absolute zero, in order to have very little interaction with the environment. Such low temperatures can only be achieved by using very advanced materials as to not short-circuit the technology. This is very costly, making this technology inaccessible to small companies. Aside from hardware issues, another challenge in quantum computing is a lack of available softwares and skilled people. The other side, classical computing, has enjoyed years of programming, support, and education. To work on a quantum computer, one must have knowledge of very complex math and physics. Therefore, a lack of expertise in this area slows down research in this technology. While challenges exist in making quantum computing a reality, to continue making steps is all that society must do. And in no time, scientists may begin turning prototypes into real tools. But say we did implement quantum computers into the modern world, what would that look like? To start, quantum computers would theoretically begin to influence the world outside of just research labs and laboratories. Most problems faced by society, traffic congestion, energy distribution, climate modeling, and supply chain management, involve incredible numbers of variables. Most often, classical computers have to resort to approximations or guesses because looking at all possibilities is too much for the system. But for quantum computers, this is no problem as previously established. Improvements like traffic would have noticeable everyday benefits for people. Industries can see the best course of action by inputting their situation. Robotics problems that couldn't be solved or would have taken months to years are now tackled within days, and weather is predicted at a much higher rate of success. Now, with all this said, quantum computing does have the ability to be used against the general population by using quantum computers to decipher the encryptions that guard every message sent. It is possible to access sensitive data, but quantum computers can also be used to stop this, and already bills like the Quantum Encryption Readiness and Resilience Act, emphasizing research into quantum encryption, have been placed in defense of this. Research into quantum encryption will allow a successful implementation of quantum computing into a world with less drawback. Quantum computing will also remake the workforce. Similar to past technological revolutions, some jobs will be newly created, whereas others will be altered or destroyed. Careers in quantum research, engineering, and software development are already on the rise, and the demand for professionals with these skills is predicted to further increase. There is already a shortage of trained quantum professionals, and this gap is only going to get bigger as more developments take place within the field. This creates great opportunities for anyone who pursues education in quantum-related fields. Overall, quantum computing can greatly benefit society, but only if it is eased into society, as they give time for changes to be made fluently. Investment should be made in education and training the workforce. Implementation into the medical field should not be ignored, but received with open arms. And action should be taken to prevent cybersecurity breaches. If handled with care, quantum computing could turn out to be not a tool that deepens problems of the workforce, but rather one that improves quality of life. Even though the technology is still in its development stage, the progress so far indicates that quantum computing will not remain theoretical. Instead of replacing classical computers, quantum computers are supposed to work with them by solving problems that cannot be handled by classical machines. How the general population handles this combination of the computers will decide how quantum computing gets introduced into human society. Society will have to develop new algorithms, new training, and new ethical frameworks for companies, and every step along the way will require our support. The power of quantum computing can easily be misused, and letting the public know of quantum capabilities and teaching them how to use it will decide whether its integration will be smooth or rough. The future of quantum computing will not be just about calculations. It's about how all of us will choose to use a tool capable of reshaping science, industry, and maybe even daily life. If developed responsibly, quantum computing could become the start of a new era in innovation, pushing us to new heights. Thank you.
We'll start with faculty questions, please.
Ms. Stewart?
Thank you, Ben. For those of us in the humanities, I wonder, could you give me like a 5-year-old explanation of what quantum computing is? My first part of my question.
Okay. Quantum computing is Quantum computing is basically when you utilize qubits, something in the quantum realm, which can be both a 0 and 1, which is like basically the language of of all computers. And because it's in both states at the same time, essentially when you plug in some kind of algorithm, it'll get out all the different, it'll get out most possibilities like very quickly. And then using something called quantum interference, it's able to sift through all those possibilities it's able to sift through all those possibilities without looking at every single one and naturally go towards the correct answer, finding those problems much faster than a classical computer in specific types of equations, like the scientific simulation.
Okay, thank you. So the second part of my question then is, in your thesis you said that we should do all that we can do to integrate quantum computing into our lives. And I wonder if you thought about, you mentioned encryption, but aside from that, I wonder if you thought about potential problems that this technology might introduce, in particular moral problems.
Moral problems, okay. Could you give an idea of what some moral problems might be?
Well, like as opposed to like problem with the software or like, I guess loss of jobs could be moral, but other moral problems that this kind of technology might introduce in our daily lives or in the way that we live.
Okay, so one thing is that medical fields might be keeping, so if quantum computing did come out of theoretical and it was able to simulate our bodies, medical fields might be able to keep all the information of our body and sell it out to other people who want to do bad things with it. So we would, as a society, we would need to put ethical regulations to make sure that they cannot spread any of that information without our permission, and that that information also becomes encrypted using quantum computers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Cortez?
Thanks, Ben. So my rudimentary understanding of quantum computers and the possibility of it includes sort of the problem of decoherence, which you talked about, right? Like the fragility of qubits. But I'm wondering if your research showed any promises in terms of error correction. It seems to me that one of the major issues with the fragility of the qubits is also that quantum computers right now are really prone to errors. And so you have to kind of build in systems to account for those errors. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that kind of error correction problem and ways to overcome it.
Yeah. So actually, very recently, a very large breakthrough was made by Microsoft, and they made it to where, so how it used to be was when you added a qubit, when you entangled another qubit, more errors would occur. It'd be harder to stabilize, but now they found a method of where the more qubits, the larger you scale up the system and the more qubits you entangle, the less error corrections actually happen. So now we've actually kind of reversed the problem and made things a lot easier to scale up. That's one way. Another thing is Microsoft recently made the Majorna chip, which is like a very stable version of the quantum chips, and it's very little prone to error correction.
Thank you.
Sir Hanson.
Thank you for your presentation. Quantum-powered AI has the potential for catastrophic disruption of cybersecurity. It's one of the areas that you hear people talking about right now. There's concerns that it'll break encryption, and that basically most digital security could be obsolete within years, or at least it's going to need to change. Do you have any suggestions, for people in the audience, like about what that might mean? Should I be like burying money under my mattress, or what kinds of things ought I be doing?
So already the government has pushed out something called the Quantum Readiness and Resilience Act, which is basically saying before quantum computers get released, we got to make sure everything is encrypted. And the way we would encrypt that is by basically using quantum computers to stop quantum computers. And we have, so right now everything's protected by a classical algorithm, which quantum computers are very good at solving. But we just need to implement a mix of both classical and quantum algorithms, like a hybrid to protect everything. And as like what we can do, we need to push all like our banks, governments, our government, banks and institutions, like we as a people need to push them to make sure everything's encrypted, that they encrypt all of our past data and all data now and all future data.
Thank you.
Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Dan. I'm just wondering about the temperatures that you mentioned, really close to absolute zero. In South Louisiana, sometimes we have trouble just keeping our homes at a reasonable temperature. I'm wondering, is this even a possibility for people to have as a widespread technology, or is there a geographic limit to where we might be able to use this technology?
I don't know about a geographic limit, but I do know that we all won't be having quantum computers, and that they'll be more spread apart. The quantum computers cost in the millions to hundreds of millions to make. So basically, how we would utilize them or use them is they would be accessible on like a cloud or online, kind of like how AI is. And but yeah, to actually keep it at absolute zero is like one of the main problems that we're trying to work past. Is also which usually causes decoherence. But
So So you're imagining, like some of these computers exist in certain places and have entire support systems to keep them at the right temperature, and then people can send data or whatever to those computers, they can compute and then communicate back.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not envisioning a place where we each have a quantum.
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Brumfield?
Thanks for your presentation, Ben. It sounds like what you're imagining or envisioning is a world in which relatively few people have built and controlled these really powerful computing devices. What would you say to someone who's skeptical of the goodwill of people for those computers? In your thesis, you argue that we should kind of put all of our resources into developing this, but maybe we don't trust those who are going to control them. How would you respond to that?
Well, one second. Yeah, so that's kind of the main reason governments are trying to push out acts to like encrypt everything, so that right now it's only like really big companies that actually have access to these machines, and like Microsoft, IBM, Google, and they're kind of sharing everything they do and are working in coverts with the governments. So, but once that all becomes mainstream, to reassure those people, we need to make sure everything is encrypted before it all becomes mainstream. So that would be the main reassurance I would give.
Thank you.
Are there any senior questions? Thanks, man.